Mr. President, the fact that the Security Council is holding a meeting for the second time this month on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine is surprising for all of those following the Council's work against the backdrop of the worsening Palestinian-Israeli conflict, on which the USA and their allies have not yet requested a single meeting. It seems that at some meetings the Western members of the Council shout to the rafters about humanitarian problems, and at others, for political reasons, they relegate them to the shadows. Mr. President, I don't wish to diminish the scale of the tragedy that the population of Ukraine is facing. It is very multifaceted, and it dates back to the Western-inspired coup in 2014 and is growing worse every day by the desire of the Kiev regime at any price to serve the Western geopolitical interests to weaken Russia, which is harmful to that country. The Ukrainian clique, as we all understand fully well today, has had more than one opportunity to silence the guns. To do that, they would first and foremost have had to stop the war against the civilian population in Donbass that they began 9 years ago, refuse from glorifying Nazi accomplices responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Jews, Roma, Poles, Russians and Ukrainians, and also provide the entire population of the country without any exception or discrimination those self-same rights that by default those living in the overwhelming majority of other states, including within the EU, enjoy. The EU, by the way, which Ukraine is so desperate to join. In other words, stop being an anti-Russia and return to normal, civilized and good neighborly development. However, the regime that came to power with Western help in 2014 as a result of an anti-constitutional coup has not only missed all these opportunities by not asking its citizens whether they want to fight a war down to the last Ukrainian, but is also bragging about this as they pester for more and more Western military assistance. To do this, they need high-profile tragedies that can elicit the pity of the Western public. Therefore, Ukrainian air defense missiles that hit civilian objects are presented by Kiev and its puppeteers as Russian strikes, contrary to the facts and video evidence. And if there aren't any such strikes, then abhorrent man-made tragedies are deployed, such as Bucha, Kramatorsk or Konstantinovka. Those who plan and carry out these things aren't worried about being refuted. The main thing is to provide another lie about Russia and to cadge more weapons. And these propaganda efforts and their readiness are willingly taken up by Western delegations in the Security Council once or twice a month, convening the Council to play along with the efforts of the Kiev regime. And various biased entities created in the West rubber stamp the reports needed for this purpose and the data prepared by those same entities in Kiev, Washington, London and Brussels, which are responsible for propaganda and all sorts of Russophobic narratives. And they also are circulated here in the Council. They circulate a blatant lie about indiscriminate attacks and the kidnapping of children. And yet, information about casualties and destruction on the territories of Donbass and the Azov region are expressly not mentioned by our Western colleagues. Between February 2022 and September 2023, on the territory of DPR, they were subjected to artillery and rocket strikes by the UAF more than 25,000 times. On the territory of the Republic, over that time, 4,712 civilians died, including 139 children. 5,289 people, including 356 children, were wounded. 136 cases have been recorded of civilians, including 11 children being blown up by PFM-1 Lepidstock or butterfly anti-personnel landmines. 3 of them subsequently died. In total, from May 2014 to September 2023, in the DPR alone, more than 9,000 civilians died, of which 230 are children. More than 13,000 people were injured, including 825 children. Precise data about casualties and destruction in the new Russian regions is still growing because the UAF is shelling them almost on a daily basis. Of course, there is no mention of the fact that the Kiev forces from the very beginning of the conflict in Donbass in 2014 have been carrying out targeted attacks specifically on critical civilian infrastructure, first and foremost water and heating. Moreover, medical and educational facilities continue to face destruction. Over 8 years, in the Donbass republics, at least 50,000 civilian infrastructure objects have been destroyed or damaged. Since February 2022, more than 16,000 residential buildings and nearly 3,500 objects of civilian infrastructure have been damaged or destroyed, including around 700 educational facilities and more than 180 medical facilities, 1,100 electricity, water, heat and gas supply objects. However, none of our Western colleagues in all of the recent years have said a single word about any of this. Nor do these figures make their way into UN surveys, which contradicts assertions that the Secretariat is impartial. Fearing the rage of Washington, London or Brussels, the UN is shamefully silent, since nothing should shed any doubt on the justification of Western arms supplies to the corruption-soaked regime in Kiev. And facts that they are being used to kill civilians or that they are sold off, enriching the Ukrainian authorities, might influence the mood of Western voters. Mr. President, I would like to address our Western colleagues. You are tripping over one another today to decry destruction in Ukrainian towns and alleged indiscriminate Russian attacks against them. I would like to ask you to not be lazy, to go on the internet, to read the Ukrainian news or to watch the television. There you will see many reports about the restaurant and club scene in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkov, Dnepropetrovsk and other Ukrainian cities. State government buildings, other municipal buildings are practically everywhere working normally. Transport is running, schools and hospitals are operating. Of course, that's with the exception of those facilities that have been damaged as a result of the actions of the Ukrainian air defense that we've already mentioned today. And that's after almost 2 years of our special military operation that we began in order to stop the war of the Kiev regime against the population of Donbass. Precision strikes target exclusively military objects or objects of infrastructure related to the military potential of the Kiev regime, including ammunition depots and the positions of the UAF that are disguised as shops, hotels, grain stores, and so on. Now, look at pictures from the Gaza Strip that Israel has been trying to raze to the ground for just 3 weeks. And you will see utterly destroyed and burnt out towns, hospitals and schools, in the spirit of what the Americans in the past did with Fallujah or Raqqa. Data about those killed, including many children, is forcing the non-Western world and normal people in the West to quake, but people are continuing to die. Once you've compared these two pictures, ask yourselves, how many times have you condemned the methodical destruction of Palestinian civilians? How many times have you tried to convene a Security Council meeting on this? Have you supported a single call for a ceasefire? All of us here know the answer. And we also fully understand the real aim of your efforts and the crocodile tears that you're trying to shed today. You cannot even imagine how cynical and two-faced your efforts look. But people in the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Latin America do fully understand that now. Our advice to you is that instead of this cynical and hypocritical spectacle, do at least one good thing for the Ukrainian people, namely, stop the criminal neo-Nazi Zelensky regime from sacrificing on the altar of the vain geopolitical plans of the USA to weaken Russia the entire Ukrainian people. The head of the Kiev clique is already very close to doing so. Thank you for your attention.